Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We are talking about Contact Report 150, which occurred right around 1981, and Billy was speaking with an extraterrestrial man named Quetzal, who in 2007 was about 376 years old. He's about 6'2", blue-gray eyes, light brown hair. He is the father of 6 children. And during the main contact period between 75 and 86, Quetzal was the commander of all the Plarian stations in our solar system. Now, Billy is talking to Quetzal about our Voyager space probe as it travels past Saturn, and it's sending recorded images to the Earth. And it's been argued at this time they thought that Saturn only had 10 to 12 moons, but in fact it has 29. Now today, if you go out on Wikipedia and look up Saturn, and there'll be like 62 moons listed. Now that's because some of these moons that are listed are actually small fragments of a planet named Melona. Melona was another inhabitable planet in our solar system in the ancient past that actually had a civilization on it. The planet was destroyed when the people that lived on that world diverted an ocean into a volcano, and that caused the destruction of planet Melona. In the ancient past in our solar system, both Earth, Mars, and the planet Melona had civilizations on them. In any sense, here in Contact Report 150, Billy is talking about celestial bodies, and celestial bodies refer to bodies in the sky or in the visible heaven or to the universe beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Now, Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun, and it's the 2nd largest planet in our solar system. It has a series of thin, flat rings composed of small particles of ice. It's what they call a gas giant, and it's about 9 times larger than the Earth. Now, there was an alignment of all the planets in our solar system right around 1982, and that's what made probe Voyager so important, because it could go easily past these planets and send us photographs back. And there were 2 unmanned space missions, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. They were launched in 1977. It took a while to get out there to Saturn and Jupiter. And this Voyager program took advantage of this favorable alignment of planets. Although they were designated officially to study just the planetary systems of Jupiter and Saturn, the space probes continue on their mission to this day, is my understanding. Now, Quetzal stated that there are expected to be discovered in the entire number, approximately up to 25 years. We will discover the actual 29 moons of Saturn, and we will also discover other orbiting bodies of Saturn, which are these small fragments of the planet Melona. And the Plarian referred to these small planets as Adonis. Now, Adonis in classical mythology is a youth slain by a wild boar, but permitted by Zeus to pass 4 months every year into the lower world. And 4, he could go wherever he chose. So there's a bit of mythology about this term, Adonis. And Quetzal states a large portion of these small planets will certainly be detected by different probes and Earth-orbiting telescopes, which will cause some confusion with scientists. Of course, back then Semyosi said that these small satellites in part come from larger fragments of the planet Malona, which had its course between Mars and Jupiter before it was destroyed. And Billy gets also some information about Pope John Paul II. And it says here in Contact Report 153 down at line 173, towards the end of April or the beginning of May, the Pope of Rome will again dissipate the monies of his believers, because once again he will begin an extremely expensive trip to different countries, which will cost many millions of dollars. He will visit Portugal, where he will hypocritically let it be announced that the Madonna of Fatima had protected him, helping him survive the assassination attempt that had been perpetuated on his life. However, with this consciously mendacious and fraudulent allegation to his believers, he will encourage the hatred of a Catholic priest of a different faith who will want to kill him and will attack him with a dagger. But this will be thwarted by security personnel before the priest arrives in the direct vicinity of the Pope. Now, Pope John Paul II was named Karol Józef Wojtyła, a strange name. He was the Pope of the Catholic Church from about 1978 until his death in April 2nd of 2005. And he visited Portugal, which is located off the coast of Europe, adjacent to Spain on its eastern side. The Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church. And when he was talking about Our Lady of Fatima, he's referring to the Virgin Mary. And based on apparitions reportedly experienced by children at Fatima, well, there was this alleged miracle that occurred at a place called Fatima in Portugal in 1917. And there were 70,000 people in attendance during this alleged miracle. It's called the Miracle of the Sun. And according to these witnesses, after a period of rain, dark clouds broke and the sun appeared. But listen to how it appeared. It appeared as an opaque, spinning disk in the sky. Sounds a lot like a flying machine to me, a flying disc. It was said to be significantly duller than normal, and it cast multicolored lights across the landscape. And I wonder if the Giza intelligences were actually the source of the vision at Fatima. And Billy described this Pope as mendacious. And to be mendacious means to tell lies, especially habitually dishonest, lying, untruthful. In fact, Billy stated the Pope didn't even believe what he was saying most of the time, and that he was a bad actor. Reminds me of some of those people in the Sandy Hook, the alleged Sandy Hook shootings, some of these bad actors. The next thing Billy learns about in Contact Report 150 is something called the Falkland Island Wars. The Falkland Islands are off the coast of South America and Argentina. They were a British colony, and there was this conflict between Argentina and England about who was actually going to retain ownership of these islands. Let me read what it says in the contact here. It says, besides this, he will also strive to arrive in Argentina in order to break in on the population with his dishonest manner regarding the war between Argentina and England. And during the month of April 1982, the Argentinians will military garrison the Falkland Islands, which are under the English colony, whereupon England will then send out a fleet, through which a veritable guerrilla war will emerge between both countries, which will demand many human lives and war material. And this war is said to be a sign of the threatening Third World conflagration of the third millennium. Remember, when Billy was a young boy, when he first met with his first extraterrestrial teacher, Sloth told him that the third millennium would start when the United States dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And part of this third world conflagration, and the third world conflagration could be the Third World War. Interestingly, conflagration also means fire. Now, this Falkland Islands War was a 10-week war between Argentina and the United Kingdom over these two British overseas territories in the South Atlantic, the Falkland Islands, and what they called the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands. And I think I have a clip that will tell us a little bit more about the Falkland Island Wars. If I can bring this up. It's called The Greatest Mysteries of the War of the Falkland Islands. Let's listen to this a bit.
In April 1982, an invasion by Argentina provoked one of the most ambitious military undertakings in British history. Britain sent a naval task force and 15,000 men to fight for a small group of islands on the edge of the Antarctic. Britain was at war with Argentina, but the odds were spectacularly uneven. I look at the challenges that faced the British, struggling to fight 8,000 miles from home, while the Argentinians were fighting on their own doorstep.
They had to fight up here in freezing conditions on exposed hilltops and across wide, open ground. I'll experience how the British troops used darkness to their advantage against a well-defended enemy.
It was one of the most improbable conflicts ever. More than 30,000 men went to war over a group of barren and windswept islands that were home to only 2,000 people.
This is the story of the battle for the Falklands.
May look like a sleepy little seaside town somewhere in the British Isles. In fact, the United Kingdom is 8,000 miles away. These are the Falkland Islands, a remote British territory in the South Atlantic. The nearest mainland is Argentina, just 400 miles to the west. Life for the 2,500 people who live here is isolated, hardy, and undisturbed. But in April 1982, all that changed, when these islands became the setting for the last invasion of British territory.
On April 2nd, 1982, about 100 Argentinian Marines landed here on the Falklands. Their objective? To capture the capital, Stanley. They were the advance party. There were 2,000 more men on their way, but the job of these Marines was to seize the town and force the British governor of the islands to surrender. Soon, the extraordinary news of the Argentinian invasion hit bulletins across the world.
The Falkland Islands, the British colony in the South Atlantic, has fallen. But that's what Argentina is saying. It claims its Marines went ashore as a spearhead this morning to capture key targets, including the capital, Port Stanley.
The islands were defended by just 69 Royal Marines, and the invading Argentinians in their hundreds overwhelmed this tiny force. They moved up here and surrounded Government House, demanding the surrender of the Falkland Islands. As Argentinian armoured vehicles rolled towards Government House, a firefight broke out. Trapped inside, the British governor, Rex Hunt, broadcast a defiant message on the local radio station.
The gun is well and truly pinned down, and that they're not trying to attack. I'm not surrendering to the bloody oranges, certainly not.
The invasion of the Falklands transformed a long-running dispute between Britain and Argentina into a major international crisis.
Anyway, that was the Falkland Islands War. Billy was told ahead of time that that would happen. Another interesting thing found in Contact 150 was Quetzal told Billy that there would be a film made. He didn't say what the name of the film would be, but he said a film would be made, and evidently this film must have been about the Meyer case. And it says really interesting. It says, I have already explained to you at an earlier date that this work must be completed no later than the end of 1982, because after that you will have no more time for it. For this reason, we have all set all responsible persons in America under our pertinent, purpose-oriented impulse radiations, through which they will be led to work more intensely. And as things now look, it seems that around the 25th of April, 1982, the film work will be started, so the film will come about in the foreseeable time. I wonder if they're talking about this film called Contact. It's on the YouTube now. It's a documentary about Billy Edward Albert Meyer. I should have thrown a link in the chat room about that, but that's a very interesting film. The next interesting thing that I want to talk about in Contact Report 150 was when it discusses Menachem Begin. Now, Menachem Begin was the 6th Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and he authorized 2 military strikes that are real famous. One is called the Osirak nuclear plant in Iraq. We talked about that a little bit before. I think during Contact 136, we may have talked about that. Billy was told that that would happen. And the other invasion that Menachem Begin okayed was the invasion of Lebanon in 1982. The bombing of the Osirak reactor was a surprise Israeli airstrike carried out on June 7, 1981, which destroyed an Iraqi nuclear reactor, which was under construction at that time. The 1982 Lebanon War began on June 6, 1982, when the Israeli Defense Forces invaded southern Lebanon. Now, Billy had some really unfriendly things to say about Menachem Begin. He had all kinds of unfriendly things to say. Called him a criminal. He said he is this is what Billy's words were about Menachem Begin. He said that he is a cowardly pig and a scoundrel without an equal. My reflection about him has revealed that he is a damn rotten creature who lives entirely criminally, is vindictive and boundless in his cowardice. Pretty strong words. Anyway, I think I have a clip that talks about this war in Lebanon, and it kind of gives the war in Lebanon from the perspective of the pilots of Israel who in this case were F-15 pilots. So let's listen to this clip a bit. Find it. This is a really good clip. It's called Wings, Eagle over Lebanon, 1982 Israeli Operation documentary. You can find that out on YouTube as well. I think we got a little dead air. Here it goes.
The F-15 Eagle is the tip of a spear that defends the tiny nation of Israel. 80 Eagles serve in the Israeli Air Force, and the pilots who fly them average more sorties than any other combat aviators in the world. They are renowned for being brazen and callous. It is for good reason. Upon the wings of these aircraft and the shoulders of these men lies the fate of the nation. They are the vanguard of a country that is smaller than 46 of the 50 states. A country that has fought 6 wars of survival over the past 40 years. Every Israeli citizen must serve in the military. All are aware of being surrounded by nations that in times past have vowed to wipe their homeland off the face of the earth.
There's no depth and distance from air bases in Israel, and any target to the border is a question of minutes when considering flying a fighter aircraft. We have to bear in mind that it's also the other way around. Hostile enemy aircraft, which attack off from Damascus, from Amman, even from H3. Once it reaches close to our borders and penetrates, it's a question of minutes, sometimes seconds even.
Enemy jets can depart air bases in Cairo and in less than 3 minutes cross the Israeli border. From Damascus, they can do so in 2 minutes, and from Amman, Jordan, just 45 seconds.
Every inch of land here has a settlement, a village, a town, and we have to defend the population. Therefore, we prefer, if it's possible, to fight all the wars outside the Israeli borders. That's the philosophy, and until today, we kept to that.
This strategy means that Israeli air bases are considered the front line of the nation's defense. Their most potent weapon of survival is the American-made F-15. This $60 million air superiority fighter is the best the world has ever seen. In the past 20 years, Israeli pilots flying F-15 Eagles have racked up over 50 enemy kills to 0 losses of their own. No other pilot-aircraft coupling in modern history can even approach this. Financial constraints and the confines of Middle East airspace create a unique set of parameters for IAF warplanes. Israeli F-15 pilots do not rely on BVR, or beyond visual range technology. Unlike American pilots who are taught to destroy the enemy at the greatest range possible, Israeli pilots do not have the luxury of distance. Instead, they are taught they must obtain visual contact before engaging.
Normally, if you don't build an aircraft in your own country according with your specific needs, then you get something that you pay for, and it really was designed for somebody else's needs. Even if it's a very advanced aircraft for a very advanced country, there are specific problems that you have to solve by yourself.
Less sophistication means greater reliability, something prized by the budget-strapped Israelis. Because of this, the IAF jet is really just a stripped-down version of the American F-15. The size of a World War II bomber, it is nearly a third titanium. Despite its bulk, the F-15 is one of the fastest combat aircraft ever built. With two Pratt & Whitney F-100 engines, the jet boasts a combined thrust of nearly 60,000 pounds and a top speed of 1,700 miles an hour.
So what we're talking about here are historical trends that take place in this time called the third millennium, and this is the time that we're living in now. In the Goblet of Truth, during the third millennium, it's said that our leaders will become megalomaniacal. They will start to take away our rights of self-determination, and we've seen that in the gun control, the loss of freedom of speech. These are historical trends that the Meyer material is prophesying about. It also says that the people will become indolent, obtuse, and indifferent, and that this will create a breeding ground for anger, and that people will start to feel anger and resentment and rage. And all across the world now we're seeing the demonstrations of that anger. In Ferguson, Missouri, we're seeing it in Mexico City, as well as another city in Mexico. There's great rioting taking place. People are rebelling against their governments that have become incredibly corrupt, incredibly megalomaniacal. And all of this is taking place because we here on the earth are actually living in what you might call an aberration. An aberration, I think of almost like a deformity. An aberration is something that has gone off normal evolution. It's an aberration is the act of departing from what is right and what is normal, what is the usual course. We here on the earth have been influenced very heavily by our religions, and also things like fascism and neo-capitalism. We've been very influenced by fanatical religions. A fanatical person is a person that has great zeal but is not critical in his thinking, is never critical of his own points of view and his own thoughts. So our whole society has gone down a wrong path, and we're suffering from that now in the third millennium. Now, to correct this, we have to get back in touch and get a better understanding of who and what we are, and particularly get back to a respect or venerability towards the entirety of nature and creation. Now, respect and venerability means a deep admiration, a sense of appreciation of the dignity and the great age of something. There's a beautiful passage in the Goblet of Truth that I quote all the time. It's called What the Truth Knows to Say. And it goes on to say that rivers, lakes, streams, the air and water, bushes, trees, everything that crawls and flies on the earth is a life form with a spirit form, and these spirit forms are on a journey through time which involve many, many lifetimes, and that death is just a passage to rebirth into the world of pure spirit, and that many of these creatures are connected by psychic vibrations, and they communicate with one another. Now, interestingly, the Goblet of Truth refers to these creatures as Weissenheiten. Now, Weissenheiten, in the German term Weissenheiten is often refers to as things like air, water, gases, and the universal consciousness. Now, the universal consciousness is said to not even have a personality, although it radiates love. And that Billy has written in one of his books, I think it's called Love Letter 27, that the incredible splendor of nature is nothing more than a visible expression of the love of creation, and that creation radiates love. So that every moment, every day, we should be able to experience the radiating love of creation, and that love is the highest principle in creation. So we should be able to look at a tree and recognize that love is the highest principle in creation. You see, every tiny plant, every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in creation. So as you go into the forest, you can hear these creatures communicate with one another. They're connected by psychic vibrations, by psychic swinging waves, and you can hear the birds sing, you can hear the crickets chirp, you can hear all the different categories of life, whether it's frogs and peepers, as they communicate, because nature is an indissoluble web of life, and a web is something that's tightly woven, such that almost like interlacing of yarn or fibrous material. Interlace means to cross one over another. And that's the way nature is. It's all interlinked in these wonderful ways. And the people of the earth have forgotten this. And they are involved in sects. A sect is a philosophy or political group, especially those regarded as dangerous. We're involved in capitalism, an economic system in which trade and industry and profit has a higher priority than the health of our environment. So we're in a tremendous threat right now. And the threat is the third global conflagration, because the path we're on is one that leads to the destruction and the damage of our planet, which eventually leads to our own destruction. A catastrophe is an extremely large-scale disaster, a horrible event. And our cynical materialism and unbridled neo-capitalism are leading to extremely serious damage of nature. And at the same time that we've destroyed nature in such a degree, a clash or a violent confrontation of industrial nations is also imminent. Or we're going to have a collapse of nature. And collapse means to break down, to come to nothing. And by nature, we're referring to the elements of the natural world, mountains, trees, animals, or rivers. And the Meyer material explains that we've desecrated nature. And desecration means to treat with sacrilege, to profane. Some of the synonyms of desecrate include defile, violate, dishonor, pollute, outrage. We are in the process of regression. And regression means the act of going back to a previous place or state, a return or a reversion. And we have the possibility of falling back into a primitive anarchy. And it says in the Goblet of Truth, indeed, in the present day, it is possible to see an apocalypse of this kind looming threateningly on the horizon over the destiny of the human beings of Earth, because even long ago the blossoming culture of the truth was destroyed globally, and evil Gewalt and every kind of asar tongue set in its place. A thing that has happened in particular due to the machinations of politicians, of false laws, false penal codes, as well as religions and sects. So we're heading towards this global conflagration. When Billy was a young boy, he was warned about this time by his first extraterrestrial mentor, Svath. Remember, Billy grew up in a little town called Niederflachs, Switzerland, which is close to Bulak, and he started getting these telepathic messages from his extraterrestrial mentor, his first mentor, Svath, who was a 1,000-year-old Plejaren man. Billy got a message to go out into the Horgan forest and to wait, which is what he did. And then out of the sky came a silvery pear-shaped craft, which landed in the field there. And Svath walked over to Billy, took him by the hand, and led him back into the ship. And he brought the ship up into the air some 70,000 meters. And Svath put a device on Billy's head which unlocked the wisdom of his predecessor personalities. And Billy had already been getting impulses from these predecessor personalities, because even before his first contact with Svath, when he was a young boy on a mild night in May in 1941, he went outside, he sat down on a bench, and he looked up a beautiful starry sky, and he said, he heard his own voice say, "My life exists because of the love of creation." And he heard his own voice say, "Since ancient times, I've lived among the stars." So he was getting impulses at this very, very young age. Now, when Billy was sitting inside the ship, he could see small screens on the ship, and he could see people below the ship. When Svath put this device on Billy's head, it says that from the device, Billy got a great wellspring of knowledge, and he felt very unusual forces penetrating into him. And he suddenly knew events that would take place in the future. And Svath removed the device from his head and explained that certain abilities were awakened within Billy through this instrument. And these abilities that Billy had were developed in previous lifetimes. And these abilities would help him in this difficult mission in this lifetime. You see, Billy's other personalities and bodies during other lifetimes had done similar work here on the earth. And Billy was told that he had entered life as an announcer of the laws of creation. Now, this spirit form in young Edward Albert Meyer has been on the earth 6 other prophets. He's been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. But his spirit form, the extraterrestrials refer to as Nokodamian. And Nokodamian incarnated 9.6 thousand million years ago. He's also known as the unblemished or precious one. The same spirit form, Nokodamian, incarnated as Enoch about 8,000 million years ago. And Enoch was known as the wise man of time, the initiate. Now, these were off of the earth incarnations. The first incarnation of Edward Albert Meyer's spirit form was in 389,000 years ago, where this spirit form incarnated in an individual named Semyasa, who fathered Adam. So there were actually 2 Semyasas. There was another Semyasa which fathered a second Adam, somewhere in the realm of 11,000 years ago. during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. So this spirit form has incarnated both on the earth and off of the earth, both in extreme ancient times, some 389,000 years ago, when the Lyrians were here. Remember, the Lyrians are the oldest race that we know of in the Milky Way galaxy. And it says here that Nocodamian led his people from the depths of the known universe into the oldest space, time-shifted regions of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, they settled in Lyra Vega, and Lyra Vega is a star system. And there's also something called the Ring Nebula, which is not that far from Lyra Vega. And the Ring Nebula is what's left over from a destroyed star. One of these Lyrian kings of wisdom, who was at that time behaving in somewhat of an unbalanced fashion, ended up destroying a star. But the Lyrians in the ancient past spread throughout our galaxy, and they conquered people. They also interbred with other peoples and colonized other worlds, and they spread throughout our galaxy. Eventually, one group split off from the Lyrians, and this was about 200,000 years ago, and they became the Pleiaren. And Svath was a Pleiaren man. Now, originally, these peoples allowed themselves to be called the Pleiadians, but they're not from our Pleiades. They reside on a planet called Ira, which is some 80 light years beyond our Pleiades, in a different space and time configuration. And the civilization on Ira is a fifth and fourth stage civilization. They live in creational wisdom, and they live in what's called real life. And they live in a perfect balance with nature. They don't mine their planet. They have no air pollution. They don't build roads on the surface of the world. They keep their population at about 500 million. They have no war. They have no poverty. They understand what are called the creational natural laws. And they've lived in a high state of evolvement now for quite some time. And they've sent this person named Svath here to help Edward Albert Meyer during the first 11 years of his lifetime. And during the main contact period between 75 and 86, there were 2,862 extraterrestrial humans on the Earth from some 12 different races. We had the Lyra Vegans here. We had people from a parallel universe called the Tao universe. We had the Pleiaren here. We had people from close by star systems. There were 3 bases, a base in North America, another one in Asia, and a base in Switzerland. The base in Switzerland had been here for about 350 years. And we have many different kinds of people in our galaxy, in our universe. We have people on other worlds which live thousands of years and even much longer, and we have people of incredible size. Some people on other worlds can reach 40 feet tall. Other people on other worlds only could be 16 inches tall. Now, in 1995, the Pleiarans left the Earth. They wouldn't tell us why. It had something to do with an event that would happen in our near future. So the official contact period is over. The contact report that we're looking at tonight was from about 1982, but Billy still gets contacts once a year or so. It was really interesting that we had at one time so many extraterrestrial humans here. There was another group called the Hasters, which the Plejaren brought here, and actually they had actually built them kind of a city, so to speak, at the bottom of one of our oceans. Now the Hasters were only about 1,700 years ahead of us, so they could have literally tolerated being in the presence of Earth humans for a good amount of time. You see, the Plejaren, because of their highly advanced state, their auric vibrations are not compatible with ours. So they cannot stand to be near an Earth human without technology to protect them. But the Hasters were closer to our level of evolvement, so they wouldn't have the same incompatibility, so to speak. But the Plejaren left the Earth in 1995, and you can read about that on page 279 of And Still They Fly, Guido Musburger's book, which you can find on Amazon if you want to read about that sometime. It is very, very good reading. One of the things that Svath told Billy is the following. He says, what your desire is to bring to the people bring to the human beings unity, peace, concord, knowledge, wisdom, love, freedom, and harmony, and more profound truth. The entire universe and everything is one, and it's all bound together. And this is one of the teachings that Svath gave Billy, is an understanding of what the universal consciousness is, what our universe is. Remember, there is a super intelligence which created our universe. It's not God. It's not a religious term of God. It isn't perfect. It's evolving. You could even say the creation is the consciousness. It's pure spiritual energy. Now, it builds universes as a part of its own evolution. So it evolves and it changes as well. Just as human beings evolve and change from lifetime after lifetime. And the universal consciousness has its own evolutionary process which takes place. Now you could think of the physical universe as an extension of the universal consciousness. And our universe exists in this roughly in the shape of an egg with concentric layers that surround each other. And these different concentric layers, they counter-rotate against one another. And our universe starts out with a big bang and then expands for trillions of years and then contracts for trillions of years. And that's called a great time. And then there'll be another universal big bang, and a different kind of universe is formed then. And so the universe has a whole evolutionary process. We as human beings have an evolutionary process. Our spirit forms were created by the creation to help it with its evolution. Our spirit form is located in the superior colliculus, which is the mid part of our brain, in the area that controls sight and our gaze. And the spirit form is no bigger than the point of a needle, and it sends out energy throughout every cell of the body. It animates our entire body. Now, when we die, that spirit form comes out of the body, and it goes into this etheric band of energy around our planet called the fine matter world. And it is prepared for its next physical incarnation. All of the previous life experiences are stored in what's called the storage banks. And at the appropriate time, which is about 152 years here on the Earth, could be sooner because of overpopulation, but that spirit form is placed back into the body of a child. It's placed back into the superior colliculus of the child 21 days after the sperm fertilizes the egg. And then all the wisdom of your predecessor personalities are placed in your subconscious. The comprehensive consciousness block ensures that you get a new material consciousness and a new personality for your next incarnation. And then while that child grows up again, it will get impulses from its previous lifetimes and inspiration from its subconscious. And so that's the way that wisdom builds on top of wisdom from lifetime after lifetime. Now, Billy's third teacher was a woman named Semyase, and she taught Billy many, many things, particularly about the beauty of creation. She emphasized in Contact Report 18 the beauty of creation. And she said that whenever he sees something beautiful, be it a flower, an animal, or a human being, or anything else, he thus instantly brings it into the association with the infinite beauty of creation itself. And the human being can trace back all of their joy to the infinite joy of creation. And all of the beauty of nature can be related back to the beauty of creation. And every time the human being sees cognition reach expression, he can relate that back to the cognition of creation. And creation exists in every human being as a fragment. So you can think of that spirit form almost as a fragment of creation. And your spirit form only really responds to neutral, positive information. And within your spirit form is something called the Gemut. And that Gemut, it was what controls the thoughts and the feelings associated with your consciousness of your spirit form. Your psyche controls the thoughts and feelings associated with the material consciousness. One of the things that Semyase told us is that we need to learn to switch off our material intellectual thought powers. That's one of the big problems in the third millennium, as we function on material intellectual thinking, such as egoism, materialism, pride, envy, greed, and jealousy, and so forth. And the kinds of human beings that function on materialism or material intellectual thinking are driven by things such as pity, self-pity, thirst for adventure. Egoism, materialism, and thirst for adventure are all examples of materialistic intellectual thinking. In fact, that materialistic intellectual thinking is sometimes referred to as the old nature, which I think is very, very interesting. So our new nature, so to speak, is related to creation. And Semyase told us that we have a spirit that does not die or sleep, even during our deepest sleep. It records all of our thoughts and motions, and it informs the human whether his thoughts are correct or false if we have learned to pay attention. And Semyase told us that our terrestrial philosophers spoke of the human as the microcosm within the macrocosm, because everything that is included in the universe is included within the human. Well, I've always took that from the perspective of seeing patterns reproduced in all levels of the cosmos, from the largest scale, the macrocosm, the universe level, all the way down to the smallest scale, the microcosm, or the subatomic, or even metaphysical level. For example, our circulatory system has a branching pattern, like the branching patterns of trees. If you look at lightning, when it forms, a lightning strike has a branching pattern, just like the branching of our circulatory system. We see the pattern of the electron rotating around the nucleus is similar to the pattern of the planet rotating around the star. We see fractals in trees. The branches of the trees grow again in these repeating patterns. The spiral of the rotating arms of the galaxy is very similar to the spiraling pattern of our DNA, or the spiraling in a seashell. So we see these repeating patterns. And Semyase said that those who are rich in spirit will become an instrument through which the creation expresses the spiritual realms. And she said this: the creative spirit is nearer to the human than his own breath. The human may not escape from this highest consciousness, for sooner or later he surrenders to this creative reality. Because it is the life of his life, the spirit of his spirit, the consciousness of his consciousness, the light of his life, the central thought force of all life, the existence that projects all human thinking by far, against which all power of the human material intellectual thinking sinks into absolute insignificance. And that's why our spirit form is called the infinite. And she said within each human, the infinite has its seat. However, there are very few who are able to recognize this. So anyway, we've been talking about the Billy Meier case. Edward Albert Meier, who is the oldest spirit form here on the earth, who is a one-armed farmer from Switzerland. And I hope all of you have a really great Thanksgiving, and hopefully I'll be back after Thanksgiving with more information on the Meier material. Talk to you later.